Well, we are here at the TNCC podcast room with a special guest, Dawn Howe.
That would be me.
All right, welcome, Dawn. Welcome to the podcast room. I'm glad to have you. This is, I think, your first time here.
First time being in the room, yes.
First time being in the room, checking it out. Anyway, Dawn, I know you've been here at this church for, over 20 years? 20 years now?
I started coming here November of 1997.
Wow.
Don't ask me to do the math because it's a Friday night.
Like 24 years.
Something like that.
Something like that. So in case people don't know, Dawn, obviously a lot of people know you. You run the the National Girls Ministry Program.
Yes, that's correct.
Here at TNCC. Can you tell us a little something about that and what made you get involved in that? Just a little back history.
Okay, so ministry background info is what you're looking for, correct?
Yeah, yes, exactly.
Okay, well, I got involved in the program basically when your oldest was 3. So that was back in 2006. I was a Rainbow's helper, and I basically got dragged into it. The coordinator at that time, was like white on rice on me for it. And it's like, come on, you got to join. And then finally it's like, you know what? I might as well at least give it a shot. I mean, I had been volunteering in the nursery, which is a little bit of the same age, even though nursery usually starts younger.
Yes.
Rainbows is like 3, 4, sometimes 5-year-olds in the group. So I was like, all right, so let me go out and help. And then I actually had both your boys at that time. And, other kids and stuff like that was, helping out with ministering to and stuff like that. Yeah, and it was great. And then after a while, I swapped places with the person that was the teacher. So then I became the teacher and she became the helper because she was having like some medical issues that she was going through. And then she ended up leaving the church, and then I ended up stepping into the role permanently. I don't remember exactly when, but I do know by the time your daughter reached that age, I was teaching her. So,
And now you're the director.
And now I am the director. A funny story about the, assuming the director role. So I was in my kitchen one day, and I mean, obviously this was quite a few years ago, and then I heard a voice saying, "You're going to be the next NGM coordinator." And I'm looking around because I'm not like one of those people who say, oh, God speaks all the time and stuff like that. But, I did look around, and obviously I was by myself when I heard this voice. And I'm like, yeah, okay. And at that time, the coordinator was Jeanette Santiago. Now, Jeanette is maybe about 10 years older than me, so she's, still pretty young. So I'm like, okay. I'm calculating in my head, probably it's going to be another 20 years. She's going to retire, move to Florida, like it seems every Christian in New York does. I still have time.
Florida, the promised land.
Exactly. And it happened the next year. So it's like, you should never assume God's timing, because it could be sooner or it could be later than what you think, but it is always on time.
So in your case, it was sooner.
Yes, it was sooner.
Well, congratulations. You're doing a great job. And
thank you.
I know our kids have fond memories of the MGM ministry, National Girls Ministry. So anyway, so this is like kind of getting to know you for the people out there. We've known each other since college.
Since college, yes.
It's probably hitting almost 28, almost 30 years.
Yeah, I would say so.
So just a little bit about your faith journey that some people might not know.
Okay. I'll try to do the Cliff Notes version.
Maybe start, it's the Cliff Note version. And, we're people from Queens. People don't know that that's where we were raised.
Okay, so I'll start with there. So I was actually born at Elmhurst Hospital, and some people out there may know what Elmhurst is because during the height of coronavirus,
Oh
it
yeah.
was featured in the news where they had like the big white trucks out there to hold, unfortunately, the deceased bodies of those people who had passed. So I was born at Elmhurst Hospital. This is a fun fact, I was actually supposed to be a December baby, but I came 2 months early. So I just turned 46 in October.
Congratulations.
Thank you. But at that time, way back when, they still need to keep you in the hospital, even though I was a decent size preemie at 5 pounds. But they still had to keep me in the hospital for a week. But then they finally brought me home. So then I grew up in Corona, New York, which is famous for a couple things. There's Flushing Meadows Corona Park, which is the proper way to say that park because they always drop out the Corona and always keep the Flushing.
Oh, it's called Flushing Meadows Corona Park.
Yeah.
Get
And
that straight, people.
yeah, exactly. Actually, funny enough, the one person that always said it correctly was Billy Graham.
Okay. Well, he did some preaching events there, some crusades.
Yes. His one of his very last ones was actually in Flushing Meadows Corona Park. So, which I remember attending way back when. And then the other famous thing about Corona, well, actually, there's a few things. I know Louis Armstrong, Dizzy Gillespie, they came out of there. Also, if you watch the King from Queens, the part at the end where Doug drops his icy and they have to go back and get another one.
Yes.
That's actually the Lemon Ice King Corona. That's where they shot the shot.
That is what I know Corona for, the Lemon Ice King.
Yeah, exactly.
I think it's still there, so you guys could, in the summertime, check that out.
Yeah. I think sometimes they're also open in the fall. Maybe not now, but I know they do like, what do you call it, the caramel apples and stuff like that.
Oh,
for
they
the
do?
Fall. Yeah.
Okay.
Man, all this talk about food is getting me hungry. But anyway, so then grew up in Corona, and my family, well, particularly my mother, because my dad, he really wasn't involved in any sort of religion or faith or anything. But my mom was a practicing Catholic. And so, like myself, my mother and my sister, we would go to Mass and stuff like that. I made my first communion and stuff like that. So, and I was, kind of into it, because I looked up to my mom and stuff like that. Basically, what happened was on August 4th, 1984, I lost my mother to a heart attack. And, I was young at that time, 8 years old, and that really had a big spiritual impact on me, where, I was going in the right direction and then just veered off. So I really didn't want to have anything to do with God. And it seemed like it also affected my sister as well because she also stopped going to Mass and stuff like that. In fact, if I remember correctly, that was the time where she switched over because she used to teach at a parochial school in Glendale.
Okay.
Not too far from where your cousin lives. And then she made the jump to the Board of Education, not too far from where, well, kind of like not too far from where you used to live in, because you lived in South Ozone Park, right?
Yeah, I lived in the border of South Ozone Park, and Richmond Hill area.
Right. Well, she taught at PS 64 in Ozone Park.
Okay.
So so that had kind of like a big impact on my family. And if that was not enough, a few years later, like as a pre-teenager, I found out from my family that my brother was a drug addict and stuff like that. So that
this was the time in New York crack epidemic.
yeah. His choice was cocaine.
Cocaine.
Yeah. So that kind of compounded and kind of affected like my teenage years and stuff like that. But still kept on going, kept on living and stuff like that. Like I always had like some sort of moral compass, but never really had like that strong faith. Like I know God is gonna provide for me. I know He's there for me and stuff like that.
So like you didn't really have that personal connection.
Yeah, exactly.
You had a moral connection, but not
Yeah.
like a relational connection. Yeah.
Yes, exactly. So I knew more of like the religious type, like, which is obviously this is false. Like, oh, if you do something wrong, God's gonna come and beat you upside the head with the hammer.
Okay.
Which I know now is obviously false, but not back at that time. And then what happened was I hit college, and I met a very awesome woman whose name is Angela Solomon, and we got to be friends and stuff like that. And we were hanging out with a couple of other friends, and this girl was giving her testimony. Now, I was kind of confused because I kind of thought she was talking about God, but then I wasn't 100% sure. Hence, like the spiritual blinders and stuff like that. And then basically what happened was it was in, I'm going to say my sophomore year. I had a classmate of mine, and we had like similar goals and stuff in life. He was working as a bouncer, and he had to, as bouncers do at clubs, just in case you don't know, have to remove people who are unruly, getting into trouble and stuff like that. Well, unfortunately for my classmate, the guy who was causing trouble came back, killed the person that he was having the beef with, and my classmate who was the bouncer. And that really had a heavy effect on me. I was like, wow, this is somebody that's my age, all these different similarities and stuff like that. And it's like, now he's gone, and I know Catholics tend to like also pray for those who have and it was just like, I was hitting the ceiling, not realizing that you can't pray for somebody once they're dead, because, they're gone to, wherever their destination was to go. And stuff like that. And the funny thing was, I had a Christian friend who was in that same group. Now you figure, okay, the Christian friend would be able to help you, encourage you, stuff like that.
Yeah.
She, however, it triggered a situation where her friend was killed in a drive-by shooting. So she couldn't even help me. So it was kind of like God was saying, listen, you can't be looking even to other people, even to other believers. You need to look to me. And so it got to a point where I was like, you know what? I need to, look into this Jesus business for myself. And so basically it was in a classroom at Prodigal Hall where I gave my life to Jesus. And my life has never been the same.
So Powder Maker Hall, okay. Yeah. Were you there by yourself? You received Christ yourself?
No, it was during Chi Alpha.
Oh, Chi Alpha.
Yeah.
Okay, so there was like a call to receive Jesus Christ as your Lord
exactly.
and Savior. And, wow, awesome. And all these years later.
Yeah, all these years later.
Influencing young kids, right, to grow up in a relationship with Jesus Christ. And
well, the weird thing is, as I said before, I kind of like got dragged into like National Girls Ministries, but just thinking about it, all the pain and hurt, which I really did the Cliff Notes version of it because I could tell the story longer, but we only have so much time. All my major hurts and pains happened when, with the exception of like my brother's drug use, because I found that out earlier, but later on I found out he had been using since I was young. But like the major hurts, because I also had a grandmother pass away, and I also had two older people that were not my aunt and uncle by blood, but I considered them, also pass away, and it was like within that 2-year period from 8 to 10.
Wow, so you had a lot of tragedy.
So I had a lot of tragedy dealing with as a young girl, and specifically, losing people via death and stuff. And the point that I'm trying to make is it's kind of funny, like God turns the situations like, okay, you had to deal with this mess when you were younger and stuff like that. Now in your ministry, you're helping out girls who are in that exact same group. Because I did teach the stars for a brief period during COVID time.
Yeah. Wow. That's awesome. And God continues to use you to be a mother, a spiritual mother to all these kids.
Yeah.
And to help the teachers, to impart ministry and, right, God's love. So they could, when they do face tragedy like that, at different points in their life, they knew who to turn to.
Exactly.
Which is Christ. So great work, Dawn. And thank you for sharing your testimony, because sometimes, you go to church with people all these years and they might not, hear this.
Right.
So I know losing your mom, eight years old, very young. How have you processed that? Like, I don't know, whatever you want to share. When you were 8 and, looking back at it now, how God brought you through that situation?
Well, the day that I accepted Christ into my heart, I remember going home and I remember going into my bedroom.
Yeah.
And I had to just repent to God. And I'm just say, God, I am sorry for all the anger that had built up, towards you for that situation. And I know that's kind of hard, especially when you lose a parent young. Now, you guys know that kids can be selfish in a bad way. Like, oh, they want toys and stuff like that. But in another way that they, not really necessarily selfish, but they will tend to take the blame for things that they don't need to take the blame for. Like, say, for
Yes.
example, if a couple is divorced and they have a child, the child will blame themselves for the divorce, even though the child is totally innocent and didn't do anything about it.
Yeah. They put that blame on themselves. Sometimes.
Exactly.
Like they caused
and
it.
I actually did that as well. I actually put the blame, on myself, saying, oh, if I had said something, did something wrong, or, maybe I could have stopped it, which I couldn't because, death is a part of life, but, you don't understand that when you're at that young age.
Yeah. No, definitely you don't. It's kind of overwhelming, the emotion, and you don't understand. Yeah, there's your first experience with death with a person so close to you.
Exactly.
And, yeah. So, and, hopefully through this, it gives you opportunity. I know I hear it many times, and sometimes it's a cliche. Your test in life will be a testimony.
Yeah.
Or sometimes your mess will become a message.
Yeah, I use that. Or I actually said that at my brother's funeral. That out of the mess of his life, because he did turn it around, and he was clean and sober. I guess that's the definition called. I don't know the exact terminology what they use in NA, but he was clean for the last 15 years of his life, which I give glory to God too.
Yeah. Yeah. So, yeah, dealing with a lot of situations like that. And, for those who are listening, you don't have a relationship with Jesus Christ. And I think, hearing personal stories of how God brings you through. And God is only the one who kind of can console our soul and give us peace. And we know those who have passed away, they're in God's hands now, and we have to trust God in the process, and trust God for that healing. Those breaks in our lives of separated loved ones. That through Christ, there's God. Christ, I think it says, reconciles all things.
Exactly.
And so, at the end of time, He will reconcile all things. Right. And
it is definitely a different viewpoint that you take once you are a Christian and you do view death. I can tell you that because I was a believer when my father passed away in 2004. Yeah. And what was weird about that, I was literally praying, and I think I had blurted out, like, I will still serve you, Lord, even if he should pass. And then I took a pause, and I was like thinking about it. I was like, okay, but please don't let that happen. It was like, let this not happen. But unfortunately, it did turn out that way, and stuff like that. But you know what? I still serve God, no matter, what has been thrown at me. And a lot has been thrown at me, not just death, but just other, situations in life that have come through. But it's just like that song, He's not failed me yet. Yeah,
He's faithful. He definitely is faithful. He brings us through these storms, right?
Yes.
There's that. The disciples are on the boat. They hit a storm. And
Jesus just sleeping away.
Jesus sleeps away. Why are you sleeping? That maybe that's what you're crying out. God, where is your answer?
Yeah.
And then Jesus.
I wonder. This is gonna be like a little bit off. I wonder if Jesus snored.
I I have no idea. Yeah, that's a good question. I don't know.
I guess that's one of those heaven questions.
Maybe he was a deep sleeper. Obviously, storm rocking the boat, and he's still asleep. But the thing is, he wakes up and he calms the storm, and so you get these images, in the Gospels of Christ, and you take that, these storms of life, right? We're not fishermen. No. Me or Dawn or 99% of you watching, but you do face the waves and the storms of life, whether that's your job, family situations, maybe it's just your emotions are in turmoil. Life seems to be the waves crashing and you feel like you're drowning and sinking, but Christ comes and he calms the storm for us. He comes at the right moment. Even though we feel like he's sleeping.
Yeah, exactly.
So, an important message. So, maybe you're watching this yet you're not in the storm yet, but it's not.
It's a coming. Yeah, trust me.
Yeah, it's not if the storm comes. It's like when.
Yeah, exactly.
It's gonna come. So, it's good that we prepare ourselves for that. So, Dawn, the aspect of your faith coming to Christ in college and now doing ministry, God is using you. Is there any other interest that people might not know, that have known you coming through Throgs Neck Community Church? Some interesting Dawn facts that people do not know.
Let me see. Oh, I can tell you one fun little fact. I am actually a day older than the debut of Saturday Night Live.
A day older than the debut?
Of Saturday Night Live.
Wow.
So in other words, I was born on a Friday.
Friday. Wow. Okay, that's an interesting fact.
That is definitely an interesting fact. And the weird thing is the first season was split up into two. So they're going into their 47th season, but they've been on 46 years.
Oh, wow. See, I didn't know that.
I didn't know that either until I Googled it.
Google. I also know that you're very interested. So knowing Dawn for so long, one of her big interests is Disney.
Oh, yes. Although...
Is it the parks or the movies? Which one is like...
Oh, no, I enjoy the parks and stuff like that. Although... some people at Disney have not been doing their jobs lately.
Okay, listen up, Disney. Listen up.
So, hence, the next trip to Florida is going to go to Universal.
Ooh.
Yes. But yes, I do enjoy
going to the dark side.
No.
Universal.
Well, I can't go to the dark side there because they don't have Star Wars. It's over at Disney.
That is true. So, Disney has that locked up for you.
Yeah, no, that's true. I mean, I've been going to Disney World, and specifically Disney World. I haven't gone over to Disneyland because I'm just a little bit afraid of that long flight. But I've been going to Disney World since like 2001.
Okay.
And usually I've done either like not week-long trips or like short like weekend trips.
All right. So this relationship with Disney. When did that start? Did it start with a particular movie you saw, or it started? You got taken to the theme park, and that's how you.
Well, remember, I went to the theme park as an adult.
Oh, okay. So obviously, as a kid,
yeah, I
you
think
saw a
if
movie.
I remember correctly, I think this is Disney property. One of the very first movies I saw was The Fox and the Hound.
My goodness, that's an older one.
That is an old one. Well, it was what do you call it? It wasn't like the original release.
Okay.
It was released again in the movie theaters and stuff like that. But yeah, I would say I always had some sort of love for Disney. Like I even remember, and I know this is going back to the more serious stuff. I remember the day that my mother passed away, what I was wearing. I had like red shorts on, and I had a gray Mickey Mouse T-shirt on.
When you were 8 years old?
When I was 8 years old.
And you remember your outfit?
I remember my outfit.
That's crazy. You have a crazy memory.
Well, I mean, that was kind of an impactful day, so.
Definitely.
Yeah.
But I don't. That's good. That's good that you have that good. So you had Disney on. So maybe that's the connection.
Maybe it is. I don't know.
So we found something. See, we found something subliminal.
Yes.
That this was a connection. So you have a connection from your mom because you were wearing Disney when you found out.
Yeah.
Right. So there's, I think there's some type of connection there. But you're also interested in Star Wars.
Oh, yes, most definitely.
Okay. So let's take a deep dive into Star Wars. So we have.
Are you guys ready for this?
Yeah, this is one of Dawn's also big passions, Star Wars. But just leaving Disney. So Disney, the big theme of Disney is imagination. Right?
Yes.
Isn't
yes.
that like?
Yes, that's one of the big things.
Don't they have like a quote? Something like they chant with imagination. I don't know. But anyway, that always catches me because it's like, it's true, using your imagination, creating something out of nothing, right? God has given us his image upon us to also co-create, right? And that brings me kind of into that memory of, we're made in the image of God, right? And here's a guy, Walt Disney, before we get into Star Wars, who has like a dream, right? Dream, his imagination, and he wants to build a theme park, right, around the characters he's created, right? But in all, he's using the imagination that God has gifted him with.
Right.
And not only that, he's willing to put his energy and work to make it a reality.
Oh, yeah, blood, sweat, and tears, I'm sure.
Yeah. From the cartooning of Mickey Mouse, which became his most famous character, but then extending that dream out to have a theme park for families. And so, but all that takes work and dreaming and planning, a will.
And having the vision for it as well. And, which I think most people know, but just in case you don't know, he never got to see Disney World because he died before I think they even started construction.
Yeah.
Or maybe they started construction and then he passed away. But he never got to actually step into the gates of the Magic Kingdom. So sometimes your vision, it may not come to pass until long after you're gone. So, or you may not get to see what you're praying for. If you're praying for family members and stuff like that to come to know Christ, you may not see it in your lifetime, but you know what? It will happen.
Yeah. So like hearing stories, like little bios about the trials, tribulations of seeing a vision through, kind of gives me a metaphor of God has given each of us a vision.
Right.
And a purpose in life and seeing it through and feeding it, even if it means you sacrificing a job, like a stable job, to take out a risk and go out and start your own thing, your own enterprise that God has birthed in you. But it will take sacrifice. It will take a type of grit and persistence to make sure from nothing and making it into something and experiencing failures along the way. And I think if you read that Walt Disney's bio, you kind of get into all of that, the trials, the tribulations, you see the success, but you don't see what the process was in order to take that dream that was in the head and make it a reality. So that what comes to mind. But anyway, getting to Star Wars. So, because I know that is your bigger passion, I guess. If I could say that, that's a bigger passion than.
Maybe equal.
Okay, equal. All right. So tell me a little bit Star Wars thing that you're.
Okay.
Into.
Well, I will do a very, very short Cliff Notes version of basically different ways that you could connect Star Wars with the Bible. So I'm going to start with the prequels, which, just in case you guys don't know, the prequel movies were The Phantom Menace, Attack of the Clones and Revenge of the Sith. So basically, the biblical connection there is that pride goes before a fall, and also love that is not, I'm trying to think of the word. Okay, so basically, the main character in the prequels was Anakin Skywalker. So it talks about him being found by two Jedi and stuff like that, and then as he goes on in his Jedi training. He meets a senator that he likes and stuff like that. Then they soon fall in love, which is a no-no because it's kind of like with like the Catholic priest, you don't get married and stuff like that. But of course, he does anyway. And then he starts having these visions of his wife dying and stuff, and it makes him very afraid because especially there was a quote that they said that he was the man with no fear. So this man with no fear was afraid that his wife was dying. And then a person called Senator Palpatine, comes in. And I think by this time he's the emperor. And he whispers, you know what? We can avoid this, but you need to turn to the dark side. So after a few situations that happen stuff, so then he ends up turning to the dark side. And I won't say who he becomes because we'll get that into the next thing. But then he basically loses it all. His wife still ends up dying, and stuff, which he thinks, she died, and also because she was pregnant at that time, he lost his child. He also lost to his then former master in a lightsaber battle, and gets basically burnt up in lava and has to be put in a particular armor. So, and the other thing was like he did want power because he wanted to be on the Jedi Council, and basically the Jedi Council like you're not being on the council and stuff like that. So, basically fear and pride, led to his downfall and stuff like that. So that's that biblical connection. Then the original trilogy, which is A New Hope, The Empire Strikes Back, and Return of the Jedi. That biblical connection is that the son saves. So basically what happens is, spoiler alert for anyone who has not seen these movies, not one but two children survived from his wife, because the wife died in giving birth to the children. So one of them is a princess called Leia Organa. She's adopted by the Organa family, and she's part of the rebellion because by this time the Empire is in control. The other child is called Luke Skywalker. He's off in Tatooine, being raised by his step uncle and his wife, if I remember correctly. So then basically, one thing leads to another. He meets his father's former master, gives him a lightsaber and stuff like that. He ends up getting mixed up in rescuing Princess Leia because she had been kidnapped by the very evil Darth Vader. And so he gets mixed up into these things and stuff like that. Fast forward a few years to Empire Strikes Back. He's trying to be trained as a Jedi by Master Yoda, who's one of the very few Jedi who survived. But then he feels like Princess Leia and his friend Han Solo, are in danger. He needs to go rescue them. Yoda's like, don't do that. You can't face, Darth Vader yet and stuff like that. He's like, I gotta go rescue my friends. So, of course, as a good friend, he goes, rescues his friends. Of course, it's a trap, as they say, and he has to face Darth Vader. So, basically, Darth Vader kicks his butt.
Yeah, I remember that scene, right? Doesn't he chop off?
He chops off his hand, and then but Vader is actually holding back, and you'll find out. And this is like the big spoiler, so if you don't want to hear this part, it's okay for you to turn away right now.
Turn away, but by now they should know. I mean,
well, there
might be few out there that don't.
They still have YouTube reactions recently of people who've never seen that big reveal. So, it's kind of funny. So then basically, to sum it up, Luke finds out that actually Darth Vader is Anakin Skywalker, his father. So then he kind of like has to make the choice like, okay, am I going to join this guy or, am I going to do the right thing and, fight for another day? So he ends up fighting another day. Then comes Return of the Jedi. He's finished up his training.
Okay.
He's decided that his father is worth saving and stuff like that, which I know a lot of people say, especially after all the bad stuff Darth Vader did, is like, oh no, this dude is not worth redemption. So he's kind of like gone in that way. It's like, because mankind will look at a person and say, oh no, kick them to the curb. And God's like, no, that's the person I want to use to touch the world and stuff like that. So then Luke goes, he basically turns himself in. The Emperor is right there. And of course, he's trying to play father and son off of each other. They get into a lightsaber battle. Luke does the same thing to Vader and chops off his hand.
Yeah.
And then, of course, the Emperor's like, okay, finish him off. And then he looks at his own, because by that time he had the mechanical hand put on.
Yes.
And then he remembers what happened, stuff like that. And then he throws away the lightsaber, which was probably not smart of him, but, you have to do it for the movie. He's like, I am a Jedi like my father before me, because even after all that fighting, he still believed his father could be redeemed. And then, of course, the Emperor does not take it too nicely, shoots Force Lightning in him. And then that's when Darth Vader has to make the choice, like, okay, am I going to stay with my master? Or am I going to save my son? And, of course, as a good father does, he does save his son, loses his life in the process. But, as I said, it is a good example of how, like Jesus Christ is the Son of God, and he's the one that saves. And no person, as long as they have a breath in their body, is beyond redemption.
Yeah. So, you have redemption, you have sacrifice, you have father-son relationship, you have good and evil. And those themes, I guess, that Star Wars kind of uses, they themes borrowed from the best book of it all, the story that we live in,
Right.
which is the story of God, right, through the Bible, and the revelation of Jesus Christ, the Son of God, who sacrifices to save us all from evil, from sin, from death. And so, so you go to like Star Wars, or you go to like Lord of the Rings, taking these biblical imageries, right, and putting it into a new story. Of course, listen, you have to go with the original story, the real story, the Bible. But sometimes it reacts and makes connections that you probably never saw before that they use from the Bible, right? The story of like redemption and the story of sacrifice and stuff like that. Pride, right? What pride could do to us, right? Pride could distort us, and how it distorted Anakin in this case, right? Destroyed relationships in the process. And he ends up getting burned by it.
Literally.
Literally burned by pride. Right? And that whole thing of, pride made Satan fall, right? It was thought that he was like the most glorious of angels, worshiping God, and pride led him to the fall, right? And so, yeah, these images come to mind. But
and there's one more trilogy we need to talk about, which, okay, disclaimer here, the sequel trilogy is actually my least favorite trilogy.
Okay.
But I will give the trilogy this. It actually has the closest connection to the Bible, because you can connect a Bible story to it.
Okay.
And that Bible story is the story of the Prodigal Son. So most people know the story of the Prodigal Son and stuff like that. There's a character in the movie. His name is Ben Solo, otherwise known as Kylo Ren.
Okay.
So he falls to the dark side, and then, eventually...
Which is the great grandson of... the grandson of...
The grandson, yes.
Of Darth Vader.
Yes. So basically, Han Solo and Leia Organa, they end up getting married. They have one son, Ben.
Okay.
So then he ends up turning to the dark side for a reason I really don't like, because it throws Luke Skywalker onto the bus, but we won't go into that. But then what ends up happening is, just like the Prodigal Son, when you turn to the dark side, you stay away from your family. And again, spoiler alert, if you haven't seen The Force Awakens, he actually ends up killing his father, which made a lot of people upset because a lot of people loved Han Solo. But anyway, so then his journey goes into like The Last Jedi and The Rise of Skywalker. So he's like the antagonist. So his opposite, the protagonist, is Rey.
Okay.
So obviously, Rey is like a pun for light.
Okay.
So it's like
a
you have
ray
the
of light.
You have light and darkness, and stuff like that. So they end up having what is called like a force bond, which is basically a connection
Okay.
with each other. And so, they're feeling their thoughts and emotions and things like that. But of course, they're still on opposite sides. So they get into a big battle and stuff like that. And, he's about to strike her down. And his mother calls out to him, like, for the last time because she's on her deathbed dying. So then he stops because even in, like, The Last Jedi, he always had that. He had a connection with his mother. Like, he could not, there was a battle going on, and he stopped. Like, he did not shoot at his mother.
Okay.
And stuff like that. And even though she got hurt, and then she had even said, oh, my son is gone. And it turned out that her brother, Luke Skywalker, is like, well, no one is ever really truly gone. And stuff like that. But anyway, piggyback to Rise of Skywalker, he stops from killing Rey. She ends up attacking him. Then she hears the connection, realizes that, Leia is dead and stuff like that. She has this power where she can force heal. So then she heals him and stuff like that. And then, she goes off because she needs to go confront a very much, but very decrepit looking Darth Sidious, who turns out, again, spoiler, to be her grandfather. But then what happens with Kylo Ren is he has, I don't know if you call it like a memory or vision of his father. And he's going through that talking like, oh, you're just a memory. He's like, no, you're my, I'm your memory and stuff like that. And so he basically has to see the light, which is Rey, like how, God is light, like we have to come see the light. But he had to be reconciled with his father before he could come back to the light.
Okay.
So that's why I say the story of the Prodigal Son really connects with him. And especially even his birth name, Solo obviously means singular or one, okay? And then Ben, if you go into, I believe is in Genesis, where Rachel is dying as she's giving birth to her second son, she says to Jacob, name him Ben-Oin, which means son of pain. And he says, no, he's going to be named Benjamin, which is son of joy. So that Ben part means son. So you got Ben, which means son, and Solo, which is singular. I mean, if that's not the prodigal son, he's a son out on his own doing his thing.
Yeah.
And so, he ends up turning, to the light and helping Rey to, save the day.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
See? All right. Welcome into Dawn's world.
Yeah.
See, what details. You can remember those movies like incredible memory. So yeah, just linking today's stories, right? And then, but it always goes back to our premise of what, the heart's, what comes out, I guess, the heart's desire to be reconciled.
Exactly.
Right. To find the light. But, obviously, Christianity is the fulfillment of all story.
Yes.
That's how I could best describe it. All story is fulfilled in Christ, right? All of history is fulfilled in Christ, right? A good parent sacrifices for their children, right? The whole idea of sacrifice, the whole idea of, the prodigal son. You've lost somebody, you lost a relationship, and now making amends and the relationship coming back and being healed, right? Which is what we long for. And through Christ, right? The relationships that have been broken through sin is now reconciled in the person of Jesus Christ.
Right. And the
so
biggest
it's
one
like-
is obviously, reconciling mankind to God himself.
Exactly.
That's why God had to provide the way, because mankind could not. I mean, obviously, the Garden of Eden, mankind blew it, but, God had plan B, and plan B was Jesus.
Yes, yes. Plan B was Jesus. And you see it in the story, right? So it's like man falls, right? He provides this wonderful garden experience in the Garden of Eden. Male and female, he created them in his image, right? But then the fall, right? The serpent comes, lies to or deceives Eve and Adam. Adam, participates in the eating of the fruit. And so it's like, but
Always blame the woman.
But they were one at one point, right? So you
Yes,
can't.
exactly.
There were two sides, right? Eve is the side of Edom, right? So they were one, right? And so anyway, so the whole thing is like in that very scene, as God is making judgment, when he makes judgment on the serpent, the last judgment, he says, "I'm going to put an enmity, right, between your seed and her seed." Right, and he's gonna crush your head, and you're gonna bruise
strike
his heel.
Yeah.
You're gonna strike his heel. So, I mean, a story like that at the beginning of Genesis, and then the final culmination of the seed. Right, so you follow the seed. Where's the seed gonna be? God calls out Abraham. Then God calls out Jacob. Then Judah. Right, King David, and then the son of King David, which would be the fulfillment of the Messiah, which is Jesus Christ. Right. So the story, if you read, the story flows together,
Right.
and in such an amazing way. And then the tree of life. So if you link up, just kind of like what you're doing with the stories, when you link up the tree of life, right. They're banned after the fall. They're banned from access to the tree of life, but then the tree of life is fulfilled in Jesus Christ because
That's
he's
right.
hung on the tree, right? And he becomes the fruit on the tree, right? Hanging, he hangs on this tree. His flesh, and so it's just an amazing type of fulfillment that. It's fully reconciled, even though the story over thousands of years plays out, and we're living in that story of reconciliation.
That's right.
That's kind of like the ministry of we're doing. We're doing the ministry of reconciliation, right? God has sent us out, me and you, as Christians today who have received Christ, to offer that reconciliation that you too, who are separated from God right now, could be reconciled through Jesus Christ, through the body and blood of Christ on that cross, the fulfillment, and be reconciled in your relationship, and have that Garden of Eden experience where now God is with you, God indwells you, the Holy Spirit fulfills you, and you too will be raised to new life in Christ. So,
Right. And that's also another awesome thing that I just want to touch briefly on. Because of having all those deaths at a young age, I had a big fear of death.
okay.
And that even continued on even after I got saved and stuff like that. What ended up happening, I'll make it really quick, I was actually at a baseball game, and it was like Fan Appreciation Day. So basically it was like the last day of the year. And at that time, because this was many moons
I'm
ago.
assuming it was a Mets game.
Oh, it was definitely a Mets game.
There's a big, okay, spoiler alert, she's a big Mets fan.
Yes, I am. Although I have been to Yankee games, and Tim can attest, I took him to the very first playoff game at the new Yankee Stadium.
Yes, she did.
And back in 2009 when they won the World Series.
Props to Dawn.
Yes. So, but anyway, yes. So it was at a Met game, and then it was a no-name pitcher. He was autographing, and he wrote JN1125. Didn't think anything of it. Opened it up like maybe a few months later. I'm like trying to figure JN. What does that mean? And then the light bulb went on, and it's like, oh, that's John 11:25. Look up John 11:25. What does it say? I am the resurrection and the life. He who believes in me, even though he were dead, shall live. you would have been shocked at the tears and the dancing and all the stuff that happened after. And I was like, it was just such liberating. You know, when you read like a particular scripture that you need at that exact time and it frees
Wow.
you, it is the most wonderful feeling in the world.
That's a surreal experience you just shared.
It kind of is. See, that just goes to show you God can use anything. You know, a baseball player, a donkey.
But you were actually, so you were living in the story. What I mean by that is that you saw this and you decided, you know what, let me look this up.
Yeah.
Right? And what happened was a treasure, right? It's like there was a code. You saw that there was some type of code out there, baseball game. You saw this JN, was it 511?
No, 1125.
1125. And you said, okay, let me look this up. And then it spoke to your heart.
Yes, it definitely did.
It was like a treasure was released. And, well, you know, thank you, Dawn, for sharing that. That's pretty wild.
That's a nice little nugget there.
That is. And I was going to ask you what's a verse to share with the audience. And can you repeat that verse? Because I think it's so. I think that's so relevant when we're in this whole COVID thing. It's like, I don't know, going on 20 months now. People have lost loved ones. People are afraid of death.
Oh yes, most definitely.
Right, the fear of death. Now there's a new variant. I feel like I'm living in some Marvel movie.
Oh, I was
all
joking.
The variants.
I was joking with my coworkers. Every time I hear one of these new variants, I feel like I'm joining a sorority because they're using all the letters from the Greek alphabet. It's like, ah.
So anyway, so we're going through this process. We're living in a story. Now it's his story, right? God has the beginning and the end, right? Eden and then the new city of Jerusalem, right? His death and then his resurrection, his ascension, and now we're awaiting his return. But yes, so if you could share that verse again with people.
Okay, well, I'll actually give you two. So that one that really impacted me in terms of like, you know, having that fear of dying is John 11:25, which is, I am the resurrection and the life. He who believes in me, even though he were dead, yet shall live. And then my favorite Bible verse is Proverbs 3, verses 5-6, which is, trust in the Lord with all your heart and lean not on your own understanding. In all your ways acknowledge him, and he shall direct your paths.
That's Psalm what?
Proverbs
What?
Proverbs 3, 5, and 6.
Lean not into your own understanding.
Yes, which, yes, I do battle with that.
That's so tempting because we live in a very rational world. We want to micromanage everything in our lives. If we do this, then we should get this outcome. Does not work. Man plans and God laughs. I heard that quote before.
Yeah, my sister says that all the time, actually.
Right? And so, you know, the thing is, sometimes our rationality becomes a barrier to really full trust. But we all struggle with that, right? That's our wrestling.
Yes.
Right? Like Jacob wrestled with God. And that's what Israel means, to wrestle with God. And so that is our journey, right? The nation of Israel, the nation called to Christ. You're going to wrestle with in faith. So Jesus gives that whole example of wrestling. And he says, take up your cross and follow me, right? That cross is suffering, right? So, and going out in the boat. And even Peter, you know, when Peter decides, oh, you know, I want to walk on water like you, Jesus, he said, okay, come on. But then the storms come and he loses faith and then starts to sink. But Jesus is there to grab him up. But there's always that challenge of going out. There's no food, Jesus. There's nothing. We can't feed this crowd. Well, now there's a test of faith, right? There's that faith. Lean not on your own. You know, my understanding says that, okay, all we're able to find is 5 loaves and 2 fish.
Yes.
All right. Maybe 6 people. All right. But they're still going to be hungry.
Yeah, exactly.
After they eat these 2 fish and 5 loaves. How are we going to feed thousands? That's mind blowing. But Jesus works out a miracle. And we're living in COVID. We're living in this time of uncertainty. We don't, even the government, even authorities, even professionals who are in the medical field, they're caught by surprise by this. They don't know the next variant, and I forgot how to pronounce this new current variant.
I think it's Omicron.
Omicron.
Yeah, I don't know.
Sounds
In my
like a
head,
video
I
game.
flip it to like a Star Wars thing, the holocron, which I know is incorrect, but
The Omicron. All right. So anyway, so we're facing this new unknown, right? We're in this unknown. What's going to happen? Is it going to come to? It's not if it's going to come. It's when it's going to come to New York. You know.
oh, it's already here in New York.
It's already here.
It's already here. Yeah, I had
So-
my coworker tell me this morning because we were discussing about it.
So yeah. So what a perfect verse.
Not to put anybody in fear because, remember your life is in God's hands.
Exactly. And that's the whole premise. Our lives is in God's hand. God who took us from the wombs of our mothers, right? From what was invisible to what is visible, who has brought us through life, through our different stages of life, the one who's written the story in our DNA. Sorry, that was just a message. Written a story in our DNA, gave us all a unique DNA. My DNA is unique from Dawn's and unique from you. And so his signature is in each and every one of us. So we have to know that we fully trust that his plan is going to be seen. He's following through, and to learn how to trust him in the process. Even when we have passed away, we know that just like he created Adam and Eve, right? When he creates Adam, he said he created him from the dust of the earth, right? So he gathers, right? And so he gathers and he breathes life into. And so thinking of, let's say, when we've turned to our final dust and we think that's our destination. No, in God, right? Picture the first fruit, the resurrection of Christ. He gathers and breathes in and gives life, the resurrection of us all.
Yeah, it's like that lyric in that Chris Tomlin song, like, my faith shall be my eyes.
Yes. And, we get all these analogies to reboot something. Is to resurrect, right, your information that you saved on your computer or your smartphone, right? We all have this terminology. So we're waiting for the ultimate reboot.
That's
by
right.
God himself, right, of humanity, those who have passed.
Oh, I'm looking forward to that new body, that is for sure.
Exactly. The new hardware. So anyway, thank you, Dawn, for doing this. I really
thank you
appreciate
for having
it.
me.
It
Hopefully I did not bore the audience to tears with the
No,
Star
no.
Wars talk.
Listen,
but that's all right.
it was great in detail. And for all those Star Wars fans, now you could find those little links. And for those who haven't watched it, if you watched it all the way through, there were some spoilers in it. But anyway, thank you, Dawn. We really appreciate having you here and serving in the church and continuing to serve TNCC and the girls that are coming up and making them into ladies and doing that faithfully and sacrificing your time. You could be doing so much other things with your time, but instead you're investing in the next generation of kids. You invested in my kids. And
Yeah, and one of your kids is an adult now. And I think
I
that's
know.
like the most wonderful thing when you stick with the ministry, for so long, you really get to see, especially when you work with kids, you get to actually see, not just the physical growth, but also their spiritual growth and stuff like that. And,
Yeah.
I think that's that's part of one of my little rewards and stuff like that. But, obviously, as we said before, with the storms and stuff like that, we don't know why we're going through it, but God does. But it's also even with blessings and stuff like that. We don't know what exact blessings will come, afterwards.
Yeah.
We can see like the immediate stuff, but, there's a reason why there's crowns in heaven, right?
Yeah. And so I just want to share a little personal thing with Dawn. You know, Dawn has been, not just a friend, but a part of the family.
Yeah.
Now, unless you know us, then you know that already. But if you don't know us yet, she not only, lived downstairs for like 15 years.
15 years,
15
yeah.
years. And
was a good tenant, by the way.
yes, very good tenant. Paid on time
Yeah.
all the time. Very good tenant. But not only that, just spoiled our kids in a good way. Taught them the Bible, invested in them spiritually, invested in them materially, gave them experiences, better experiences than I did. Like took them to the first hockey game.
Stop that.
I'm talking about in terms of sports, okay?
Oh, okay.
Like you took him. I remember you took Caleb to his first hockey game.
Yes. Can I tell that story?
To the Rangers.
Can I tell that story really quick?
Yeah, tell that story.
Okay, so this is funny, right? So you know how there's that old saying like, oh, I went to the fights and a hockey game broke out? Now, typically when you go to hockey games, fights don't normally break out in the stands, but in this case it did. And it literally broke out right next to us. And actually, how do I say this nicely? The person that was initially sitting next to Caleb, let's just say he was a little inebriated. And I'm like, okay, Caleb, I think let's switch seats because then you can see a better view. And then I won't say what happened because there was some swearing going on, but basically...
Colorful language.
Colorful language. And then somebody spit at somebody, and then it was on like Donkey Kong. And of course, me being the calm, sweet New Yorker, I'm like, stop it! Cut it out! What are you doing? So then
there's a kid.
Yeah, there's a kid. Well, I don't think I even said there's a kid. I'm like, stop it! So then security came, and then, but by that time, I did not feel comfortable. I'm like, Caleb, we're out of here. So I went to go get him, I think M&Ms or a hot dog or something, and we just... ate or whatever, and it's like, all right, I gotta check on this kid to make sure he's okay. So I'm like, Caleb, are you okay? And he says, because he calls me Titi. He's like, yeah, Titi, I'm okay, but can we not tell Mom and Dad? I want to go another hockey game. And I'm like, want to face palm, be like, you just saw two grown men fighting, and you're worried about not going to another hockey game. Meanwhile, I'm like the one that's traumatized, which just goes to show you our kids are a lot more resilient than we give them credit for.
Yeah, so thank you.
Which, by the way, I obviously did tell Mom and Dad that night. I was a good DD.
So I just like to send my thank you, for investing in my kids. Me and Angela's kids, they're like your kids.
And still investing because your daughter is only 12. So
well, and still the relationships continue, right? Even into adulthood, that you've poured into them. So it's just like a wonderful thing. You get to see that from the outside. And another cool tidbit that I like to share. It's
I'm kind of scared now.
Okay, no, it's for the Jet fans because Jet fans are always going to remember this. Dawn invited me, Caleb and Joshua. It was on Thanksgiving. I forgot the year.
2012.
2012. This will live on in Jet fans' mind as a bad event.
Yeah, this was a pretty bad event. I mean, I think they just stopped showing it on ESPN last year.
This was the butt fumble.
Yes, the butt fumble game. And you remember my reaction? Because I'm like, wait a minute, did that just happen? Like, because I thought I was seeing things, and then I had to wait until I got home very, very late because it was a 8 p.m. Thanksgiving game. So then it was basically Friday morning when it's like, oh, you really did do that. Yeah.
So anyway, thank you, Dawn, for those memories.
What a way to end a podcast, by the way.
Yeah. Sanchez butt fumble. That's classic. Listen, you remember those things. Those are memories that are seared in for the rest of your life.
Yeah.
If you're a sports fan, especially if you're a Jets fan. But anyway, thank you, Dawn, again. God bless everybody who tuned in and is watching this. Comment, subscribe, click the bell, do all that stuff. Anyway, God bless you and have a wonderful day.
God bless, guys.